Welcome to my first video interview. I'm Carol Miller, and I'm a life and mind body coach specializing in helping people recover from neuroplastic pain. If you're familiar with Dr. John Sarno, you've heard it called TMS. If you're familiar with Dr. Howard Schubner, he's attributed with calling this mind body syndrome. Chronic pain is often the result of learned neural pathways in the brain, and in many cases, it can be eliminated or significantly reduced through specific processes. What we know from modern pain science is that the brain creates our physical experience of pain, whether the cause of the pain is physical or psychological. I'm saying chronic pain, but I'm really talking about any long-term symptoms that have no structural cause. There's no clear injury with a clear treatment plan. Things like migraines, most back pain, chronic fatigue, digestive issues. All of these maladies and many more, I could not make an exhaustive list, have been helped or cured with this work. You'll see in my interview today that we're really not just talking about pain. I help my clients understand, first of all, what neuroplastic pain is. From there, we work on how to change the input the brain is receiving so that the danger signal the brain is picking up on can settle down and the symptoms can subside. Really, after the education piece, this is about developing a more trusting and compassionate relationship with yourself. With that said, I'd like to welcome my guest. He just happens to also be my husband, but I promise you, he has a remarkable story and it's very worth sharing with you. So, welcome, Joseph.
Hello, good to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, for agreeing to do this.
You're welcome.
In order to hear from Joe, a little context is needed. If you've read my newsletters or blog posts or know anything about me, you know that I suffered from migraines and neck pain for over 2 decades. I had tried everything, and I know that my story is a very familiar one. I had drastically changed my diet. I had done acupuncture, I did chiropractic adjustments, osteopathic treatments. I went to a naturopath for a while. I tried physical therapy for my neck. I tried Botox, various medications, reading books on curing migraines. I felt like I tried everything. And some of it would help for a little while, and then I'd be back to square one. I'd been introduced to this work in 2019, but it took a little while for me to really dive in. When I did, the neck pain that I'd experienced for so long vanished almost immediately. The migraines took more time, but they drastically changed. So, as you can imagine, my husband all that time was hearing me talk about this and watching as I was really having a transformative experience. Joe, do you want to talk a little about what that was like, what you heard and saw during that time?
Sure. Um, it was very disheartening because for a long time you'd suffered and it was obviously affecting you in a negative way. It was also, uh, it affected our family, the whole family dynamic because you were suffering so much. Um, but it was interesting to watch, once you started this mind body work and learning about it. It was amazing to see how much you how it changed, and it helped you dramatically.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, chronic pain really does affect everyone around you. It affects the whole family. I would disappear for a couple of days sometimes. And then when I emerge, I wasn't myself because it took a while to come back to feeling like myself. So that is another, such a difficult thing about chronic symptoms. I was already a life coach at that time, and as such big changes were happening in my own life, I decided that this was the area I wanted to work with others in. And I remember the evening that I kind of turned my sights on Joe. Joe, tell us about your experience. What were you dealing with?
Sure. For the longest time, starting in my mid 20s, I noticed that my legs would twitch a lot, like little spasms, and like my thighs would twitch. Um, and it was very disruptive for me. It was just uncomfortable physically. And it was just scary to have. Not that it was super painful, but it was just very disruptive. Um, so I really didn't know what it was. Um, and then I happened to be talking to a family member who is a physical medicine and rehab doctor. And I described the symptoms to him, and he immediately said, "Oh, you have restless leg syndrome." I'm like, what's that? And he kind of explained it, but it really didn't make much sense to me, honestly. I just knew I had twitchy legs and it bothered me.
Yeah.
Uh, it would, sometimes it would be for, you know, a few seconds, or sometimes it would be for a much longer period of time. Um, and it was just really, really bothersome. Um, I tried, he had recommended like a muscle relaxant, a prescriptive muscle relaxant, which I tried, was not effective at all. Didn't really help. Just kind of made me feel, cloudy in the head. Um, you know, Heard about, you got to drink more water. And I had already been hydrating a lot because I just like water. Um,
Mhm.
Stretching, got to stretch your legs. So I
Mhm.
was like doing all this stuff, and it never went away. And so I'd been dealing with this for like 35 years.
Right.
Um,
So, from your perspective, what made the difference for you?
well, I had watched and observed how what you were doing to help you with your migraines. Um, you know, that education piece, I kind of started learning about that through you, the
Mhm.
mind body, and so I tried doing those things, and it seemed to help. I mean, um,
Okay, so when you would hear me talk about it and about like that mind-body connection and how the brain works and responds to familiar input, you're talking about the education piece. So I just want to jump in here that that education piece is so important. Dr. Sarno, who I mentioned earlier, talked about it as being the foundation, and lots of his patients healed with just that piece. That basic understanding that the brain is in charge of sensation in the body is so important. So we think that because something is happening in the body, that means there's something wrong in the body, and we need to look for the physical answer, for the physical problem. But for these chronic issues, we won't find the answer there. Dr. Schubner, he often says something like, you can't fix the problem until you have the correct diagnosis. So for you, Joe, you can see that, yeah, your legs were twitchy, and the name of it is restless leg syndrome, but really, your correct diagnosis was neuroplastic symptoms. So that education P was obviously key for you because you learned to attribute the symptoms to the correct cause. Now, I want to assure everyone who doesn't just miraculously heal from education, it seems miraculous, that very often it takes more time and work than just the education piece. Okay, Joe. So what else helped you?
so um, I would when it occurred, um, instead of, dwelling on, oh man, something's wrong, um, and really focusing on, I got to get rid of this, it was more about just feeling the twitchiness and,
Mm,
and feeling, just, okay, it is what it is. Um, and telling myself that, and reassuring myself that there's nothing wrong with my legs. I have a strong body. Um, there's nothing wrong with me. And it was kind of interesting because it fairly rapidly went away. Um,
mm,
and the, the length of time when it was actually occurring seemed to get shorter.
hmm.
And then I just kept on doing that. And then also um, when it wasn't occurring, when it wasn't actually twitching,
Hmm.
I pick certain times of the day, morning or lunch, or you know, and I would just kind of reaffirm to myself that I have a good, strong body, and
Okay.
if they twitch, there's nothing wrong with me. And then pretty
Right.
much it just went away. I haven't had a problem for in a long time.
Yeah.
I haven't had a problem since
Right.
then.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Initially, we worked together on just being with the sensations, exactly as Joe said. I guided him through an exercise called somatic tracking, where he just felt what was going on in his legs and he got used to observing it neutrally. So that was what he was talking about. Not viewing it as, oh, there's something wrong with me, but this is just a neutral sensation and reassuring his brain that there's nothing wrong. So I worked with him on that at first, and then he took it and just did it on his own. So I also want to go back. He said that he would drink a lot of water and get up and stretch. He'd massage his legs, or he'd ask his wife to do that. When we resist or fear or try to fix the sensations, even by always responding with those seemingly innocuous things like massage, stretching, we are reinforcing the pain pathways. So the brain receives the message, something's wrong here. Because every time this happens, he responds by trying to fix it. So when we mindfully observe sensations in our body from a neutral stance, which is what I guided Joe through and then what he did on his own, we're signaling safety to the nervous system. So, Joe, when was the restless leg most likely to occur? Was there a situation, a time of day, anything that seemed to trigger it for you?
Sure. Yeah, it seemed like it was when I was just relaxing or winding down.
Hmm.
Um, during the work day, busy thinking about work and that type of thing. But when I was, just relaxing and whether it was just sitting there or watching a TV show with you or um, even reading a book, then
Hmm.
that wind down period, it seemed like it would occur pretty much during those moments uh,
Yes. Okay.
when I wasn't fully engaged with something like work.
Right. So I know that you talked about how in your home being productive was a big thing. Do you want to say a little bit about that? At one point, you kind of made a connection between that and
Yeah.
the relaxation of the evening.
Yeah. I think after thinking about it, because there's always that, at least from what I understand and have read, there's an emotional component or connection in there. So I was trying to think that through and being idle was kind of a or relaxing is was I'm not going to say it was looked frowned upon, but you always had to be, like Carol said, you got to be doing something. You got to be
Mhm.
productive. So I was thinking that maybe when I wanted to relax, that was um, I had trouble with that maybe internally of
Right.
just relaxing and not
Doing.
being comfortable doing nothing.
Right. And the brain categorizes. That's how it works. It makes predictions based off past experience. It would be very inefficient for it to see every situation as brand new and have to learn everything as if for the first time. So, Joe, in your case, you had developed a conditioned response to sitting or lying down quietly. Your brain would be occupied with other things during the day, as you said. And then when you would get unproductive in the evening, the brain would get busy with its twitchy legs to keep you productive. So you already said this, but just to clarify, have you had issues with restless legs since?
No, I haven't. Not
Okay,
once.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's another symptom that Joe has had a lifelong challenge with, and I'll let him tell you about that.
Yeah. Ever since, I was very young, maybe 10, 12 years old, um, I've had lactose intolerance, with dairy foods and caused a lot of anxiety. It was very disruptive for me personally. You know, I had to watch what I would eat, and um, you know, that caused a lot of anxiety. And then I'm wondering, okay, where's all the bathrooms at, just in case I need to go to the bathroom. So it
Mhm.
was overall, it was very, very stressful and
Yeah.
disruptive ever since, for 40 some odd years, 45 years.
Mhm. So, what about this? Do you feel there was an emotional piece to this?
Yeah. When I reflecting upon it, you know, um, food was always, at least in my family, was kind of how you showed, affection and love.
Mhm.
Um, and, it was, the home was kind of stressful.
Mhm.
So it was kind of a roller coaster emotionally for me. And um, so that caused a lot of anxiety and stress. And then, the food was kind of the component which, tried to show affection and love. But at the same time, maybe I was thinking, well, even though there's food and I understand what is going on, it seems, they're showing love through that mechanism. It just wasn't really true to me, I guess. Uh,
Mhm.
um, Not that it was all terrible, but it was, just it was just difficult,
Right.
especially because of the roller coaster, the roller coaster type of atmosphere, I guess.
Yeah. And your nervous system probably made the connection between food and anxiety.
Yeah. Sorry about Georgia in the background.
Mm,
Georgia.
that's all right. Studies
You
show that
want me to go get
individuals,
her?
sure, with challenging childhoods are more likely to develop chronic symptoms. The nervous system learns at a young age to be on high alert, and we develop behavioral and emotional patterns to cope with real or perceived danger. And I want to be clear that it doesn't have to be the experience of trauma with a capital T. A child experiences many things as overwhelming that to an adult's eyes are not perceived as scary at all. But in this work, we're bringing those unconscious patterns that we maybe developed as children into our conscious awareness so that we can heal them and thus give our nervous systems a chance to settle down. So, Joe, I think that's great that you made that connection, and I think that's been helpful to you. Now, with the lactose intolerance, I had noticed that sometimes Joe would have stomach issues with dairy, and sometimes he wouldn't. And that is a key diagnostic tool. If you're lactose intolerant, you're not going to be lactose intolerant sometimes, but not others. So, symptoms that happen sometimes, but not all the time, that move around the body, that change from day to day, are likely neuroplastic. And I want to give you a couple examples. If the sun sometimes, but not always, gives you a migraine, it's unlikely the sun is the cause of the migraine. If your back hurts on the drive to work, but not on a drive to meet friends, then an injured back is not likely the cause of your pain. So watching that with Joe, the nature of it, that it came and it went, is what made me think that, I'm not sure he's actually lactose intolerant. So I just suggested that to him. And what did you do to work on this, Joe?
Um, just I was pretty skeptical that maybe this wouldn't work um, because, lactose intolerant just seemed like, okay, that's a pretty scientific thing. So I was a little bit skeptical. But I did the same thing as before. Um, the education piece with the mind body, and I started very small. Um, and I just I stopped taking lactate right out of the gate because I kind of figured, okay, well, to to me, to see if it worked, I had to stop doing that. So I stopped that right away. Didn't take any of those pills whenever I had dairy, and I started very small, having some dairy, whether it's a small piece of cheese or a very small cup of milk or something, um, or some ice cream, and I would just again tell myself, oh, I have a strong body. My digestive system is healthy and it works properly. Um, you know, everything's working as it should.
Right.
So, when I had a little bit of success there, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So, and just to kind of put it in perspective, I mean, I hadn't made any of the emotional connection that I described earlier. I was just, that kind of came later. But I would just do a little bit more and more. And the same thing when I wasn't having dairy, just throughout the day, I would kind of remind myself I have a strong body and strong system and
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. And it just got
Okay.
better and better.
Yeah. I want to highlight that you said that you started small because that's exactly the way you want to do it. You don't want to overwhelm the brain with, we're not using lactate, we're going to have ice cream today and a glass of milk and the whole shebang. That probably would not have made your brain feel safe. And that's what we're looking for. So starting small was wise. That was exactly, really a good way to do it. And from my perspective, one day you just told me that you're no longer taking lactate and that you hadn't had a problem. And it was amazing to me because I kind of knew that you were testing it, but I didn't know that you really were not taking lactate anymore. So I was quite pleased and very proud of you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Costco doesn't like it anymore.
right. Because the lactate is
Not buying
languishing
it.
in our cupboard now.
Yes.
So I'd like to recap today's interview a bit. What was helpful for Joe, first of all, again, was the education piece, understanding that we experience pain and other symptoms even in the absence of damage in the body, which therefore means it's not actually the body that needs treatment. And so rather, we look at retraining the brain to develop new neural pathways, and we look at psychological and emotional factors that may be coming into play. We talked about the conditioned response and its role in creating neuroplastic pain or symptoms. Affirmations. I don't know that we called them affirmations, but when you were saying my body is strong, my digestive system knows how to function, those are essentially affirmations, and they were powerful for you. The phrases that you used to reassure your brain made sense to you. And that's another key thing. Um, you don't want to just parrot what somebody hands you. Here, say this, because you actually do need you need to believe it. So you need a felt sense of safety. And Joe, your subconscious got the message pretty quickly on both of these issues. We also talked briefly about how children growing up in stressful environments are more likely to experience chronic symptoms. So, again, I see so much of this work as being about developing a deeper and more trusting relationship with yourself. And that, in a nutshell, is what I help my clients do. It's almost as if the byproduct of that relationship is that the danger signal is lowered and symptoms no longer rule one's life. We start out thinking we're going to get rid of the symptoms. And then, in some ways, that just becomes the fortunate byproduct of developing this better relationship with yourself. So, Joe, thanks so much for being with me and doing this. I appreciate you sharing. And I think that your issues are very common and relatable. And thank you again.
Thank you.
You can find me, sign up for my newsletter, contact me if you'd like through my website at carolmiller.com, and that is Carol with a K. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, and I'd be very happy to hear from you. Have a good day.